Thank you, Hans Christian. And I'm going to tell a little bit about why should we work with business model innovation. Let's see. Yeah, why business model innovation and why the MMI program? If you go back 2 years, it's really what we said. It's about innovation and how you look at it. It's about the mindset. If your eyes, if you can't trust your eyes, it doesn't matter where you look, really. What IBM did in 2006 in their global CEO study among companies, they looked and asked around 1,000 company managers all over the world, and they came up with a finding, significant finding, that companies that went from only product and process innovation, they actually had a broader perspective, and what they deemed or called business model innovation, they tended to outperform in terms of turnover, growth, and investment on the equity and stock markets. And it's significant if you look at the business model. The gray or the brown one signifies this. So this was a significant insight a couple of years back when we said there is something to look into here that is important, and we should do that. The second thing is that we started asking ourselves with the hypothesis: if you're a Swedish company, Norwegian, or wherever you come from, and you have more or less the same size, you're within the same industry, how can we explain that company A is doing different from company B? We have in the innovation policy and the measures for innovation policy, but also framework conditions, cultures, and so forth, more or less the same ramifications for an industry. So we cannot explain it from looking at these factors. See, the customers, the culture, the business conditions are more or less could be the same. So what we said is that we actually need to find out why is company A more happy than company B. It's not because of the framework conditions. It has to be something that's going on inside the company. And this is basically we had to open the black box and understand what takes place in company managers, the mindset and innovation outlook of company managers. This in itself was a little bit of a step further than or challenge to traditional ways of working with innovation programs, because it's always been arm's length. So how could we walk into companies without being the clown from government, so to speak? That's why we hired the business consultants to help us with this work and do the deep dive workshops. So how does this work? Before we go to the actual results of the MMI program, give you some illustrative examples. There are actually, Simon & Garfunkel sings about the 50 ways to leave your lover. We say there are 4 ways you can do innovation, at least in the business model. The first one is that you can have a very narrow focus, but still you have a focus, as you can see on this one. You don't put a lot of effort. This could be a startup company that says, we want to disrupt an existing company. We want to go for the area where this company is weak or where they have overlooked a new market or customers. Second area is where you have actually a lot of focus and you have high effort. So here you have 5 areas where you really say, these are the 5 dimensions that we want to attack and use for our company, and at the same time it's very focused, as you can see. And as some will remember too, we worked with the innovation radar system in a sense that as a company you should probably not have more than 5 focus dimensions at any point of time, because that would be too much. Then we have what is low focus and low effort. You can actually make money. There are radar studies from the US here that shows that oil companies would fit this bill, mining companies too, and reinvest less than 1% of their turnover, and they are making a lot of money. But for most companies, this is not a good strategy, and maybe it only works in oligopolistic or monopolistic sectors, actually. And the final one is that you can have shooting with a shotgun, so to speak. Every time there's a new proposal inside your company, you will say, yeah, let's put money at this, and we will try to be all over the place. This is a very expensive way of doing it. And the message that we tried to set out from the beginning, if you recall, is that high focus and high effort is probably where it's best to be. And if you are at an earlier stage as a company, at least have a profile like in the top left corner. So how does this work for companies? We have tried to look at some illustrative cases just to make sure Apple was not in the program and the two next companies were neither. But it might be instructive to have as a back in your mind that if you go back, we have used expert cases, business cases, and so on to look at Apple. When Steve Jobs was called back in the 90s and Apple was in deep trouble, they had a huge line of products. They had printers and they had problems making money, and it was basically close to being bankrupt, and people actually advised Steve Jobs, don't go back because it's finished. This Apple company is finished. What he did was actually to say, let's go back and focus on our product line. We will make the best Macintosh or computer, personal laptop, only 3 different ones. So actually what he did was to go scale it back and go for product. They needed to make money, so that was the value capture, and he shifted the management. Next, after we know the story, but from 2000 to 2006, what he did after he turned the company around was actually say, okay, let's introduce the iTunes. That was the new platform for it. And they came with the Mac stores. So that was the customer experience. Communication, every time that he had the announcement of a new product like the iPhone, the iPad, and so on, turned out to be like almost like a Hollywood event. And what people don't know is that Apple managed to build up maybe the best supply chain in the world. They actually beat Dell on this after 5-6 years. As the third one here on Apple is to say, where are they today? We would argue that they are still great on customer experience, making a lot of money. More than 1% of all equity in the world is invested inside Apple. It was in The Economist yesterday. They have still the best supply chain, and they have a unrivaled ecosystem. More than 300,000 entrepreneurs are sitting around the world trying to develop a new app for Apple's iPhones and other iPads and so on. That is probably the best business model in newer times if you ask experts in the industry. Now, this Apple story might be a little bit trivial, but the point here is that the whole thing about working with innovation, business model innovation, and especially the radar is have a dynamic perspective. Nothing is static. And if you just have one profile, it doesn't help you in the long run. And there's no guarantee that actually it will help you, but at least be dynamic about it and try to play with all 12 dimensions. This is one of the key kind of messages from this program. Take another example. They were not in the program either. Danske Bank, I don't know if you saw their advertising in the Arlanda airport. This is an interesting case. They came out 10, 15 years ago and said, we have the best IT platform. And from this IT platform, we will have the best internet banking. Started to buy up, expand. They bought Sampo Bank in Finland. They expanded into Focus Bank in Norway, and they were all over the place with these 2 things. And after they rolled out the platform, also in Ireland and so on, they said, now we have the best platform. Let's make a lot of money on this. And what they tried to do was to make a lot of value capture and money. Now, if we look where, actually it should be 90 up to today. Anyway, they have been in deep trouble after 2008, and they have tried to reach out by communication. They have a disastrous communication campaign right now in Denmark. They have been trying to build their supply chain after being bailed out by more or less by the Danish taxpayers and government. They said thank you and tried to outsource a lot of jobs to other countries, new supply chain, and they're still trying to make money. Now, the point about Danish Bank is that they actually, if you look at it, have very clear profile all the way along. So you can have a clear profile. You can move around. What we probably would see with Danske Bank is that if you notice one thing that is left out over the last 15 years is that there was no focus on customers. That would be the argument here. So it's probably very, very dangerous in any case to not focus on your customer, because your customers defines who you are as a company. Just the final one here is IKEA. We all know them, and they are in a sense timeless, argue, with this profile. Their platform, the IKEA store, has been like platform for a lot of things. That you have the supermarket for Swedish food. You have now, they are expanding into the hotel business. and they can probably furnish this hotel themselves. They will compete with the middle to cheaper segment. Customers have actually an experience when they go into IKEA. We don't think it's a customer experience to put things together yourself, but they are very good at process, and they're very good at making money. When they buy a new land for IKEA stores, they actually buy a lot of additional land because they found out throughout the last 20 years that it tends to go up in price, the real estate where they buy land. And when they bought built the first IKEA store in Moscow, they bought additional land in 1 acre, and they're making a real estate profit on this. That's really good how related businesses can be innovative around your money, and they are world-class in their supply chain. So just to recap on this, these 3 examples show that there are no one size fits all, but it's very important to have one, that you have a dynamic perspective when you work with the system. And maybe the most important is always regard who is the customer, and then play with all the dimensions. It's not enough any longer probably to be stuck in what we would say product process. Those who are familiar with this is what we would say is kind of red ocean, shark-infested waters, where you will have increasingly competition on price and product, which is, unless you have a 3D printer at a large scale, you cannot build a Dreamliner yet. Maybe a violin, but it's still some time to go. So with this in the back of the mind, we would like to introduce you to the key findings from the MMI results. We're not going to show you all of the results, but some of the results that we think are most significant for discussion here. And for the rest, you have the report, and we hope you will read it. And Christian, you will join me again, I guess, with the MMI results.
Okay, thank you, Jørn. Now we'll look a bit more macro across all these companies that have been taking part in the program. And to start off, I want to show this slide. It was mentioned in the beginning, but we've had 100 companies participating, 800 managers in total that has taken part in this exercise. So it's quite substantial. There's been a rather similar spread across the 5 Nordic countries. We've had the companies of different sizes and industry sectors, and in the back of the report you'll find the complete company list of all the participating companies that are behind the statistics that I will show you now. So basically what we want to do, we have one benchmark here with to the US companies, because Kellogg has also a database of about 300 companies profiles that we have compared against. And what we see is that Nordic companies are significantly more focused on product or offering innovation. We are much more favoring the first quadrant, whereas US companies have a much higher or a lot more companies focusing on partnership innovation than we see Nordic companies have. So this is a major finding. Could be many reasons for this, but at least that you see that US companies are favoring different dimensions more than we do. Going back to what Jørn showed you just a moment ago with the 4 different types of focus, we see that something has happened in the Nordic companies during this journey. And that in 2010, we only saw that about a third of the companies had a threshold that made them focused in the radar. 2/3 of the companies had rather low focus, shooting with the shotgun, like Jørn say. Now we see that about half of the companies have turned focused. So it has been an increase in the focus of innovation of companies. They are more selective where they put their focus. Another finding that we find interesting is the internal alignment. Because what's unique about the Measured and Managed Innovation Program is that it breaks down the silos of companies. It has included company managers with different functions. We've had some from the product department, from the marketing and sales department, from the management and finance, and from distribution and sourcing. And starting out, there were quite a low agreement about where they saw their company being and where they saw their company innovating. Less than half of the company had high internal agreement and awareness of innovation. Now, almost 4 out of 5 companies have high internal agreement. We have introduced a framework which apparently have given them a common language and a common understanding of where they are and where they want to be. We also see that having an innovation strategy leads to higher focus, and it also leads to higher investment into innovation or higher innovation effort. Now, let's look at the dimensions. Where are the Nordic companies focusing? And we can see that in 2010, when we did the first survey, 64% of the companies had a bias towards offering-oriented innovation, meaning they were innovating within products, solutions, and platform innovation. And only 3% said that their primary focus was within partnerships. When they were asked about where they wanted to innovate in the future, it was a different picture. We see that more companies wanted to move towards customer-oriented innovation and operations. But then when we look again in 2012, are you curious what has happened? So we say we want to be more working on other areas of innovation, but we are not innovating where we say we are going to innovate. So even more companies are favoring offering-oriented innovation as their primary focus of effort. 80% of the companies in 2010 have a bias towards offering-oriented innovation. But when asked for their future dimension, we see that they want to go to new areas of innovation. So clearly something is happening with the mindset, but it may be easier to think where we want to go than to actually make it happen. This is something we need to discuss later on today, I think. But it could be many reasons, and maybe we just have to finish up something we're doing in the product development department here before we can turn to the other dimensions. But this is an interesting finding. When asking about the most important future dimensions, we see that Nordic companies want to work less with offering-related innovation and more with innovations like customer experience, value capture, and supply chain innovation. We see the dimensions below the line are the ones decreasing in priority, and above the line are the dimensions that the companies want to focus more on. Now let's look at a bit of the different changes happening at the country level. We see that in Denmark, there has been a strong upgrade on management and partnership dimensions. Danish companies are working more on innovation in these dimensions. In Finland, we see that there is an increase in offering-oriented innovation and in partnership innovation. I'm just mentioning the two most significant changing dimensions in these slides. In Sweden, we see that offering innovation is downgrading, that they are using less focus on offering and a bit more on management and value capture related and process innovation. And in Iceland, it's rather high consistency over time, yet we see a clear higher focus on value capture, which is important. In Norway, it's rather consistent, but we see also an increase in process innovation. But the most significant finding, and that we are very happy to see, is that we are moving from, in 2010, only 4% of the companies had high focus and high effort. And now 24% of the companies have high focus and high effort. So clearly something has happened in the mindset and also in their focus. In other words, we are moving from low focus, low effort towards high focus, high effort. and this is what we want to see. We've asked the companies, we have an ongoing evaluation, and we asked the companies how this program has been helpful to them. And this is the overall satisfaction with participating in the program. 56% of the companies express high satisfaction with the MMI program, and 15% very high. 65% of the companies think that MMI has helped highly or very highly in spotting underdeveloped business areas. This is very good to see. 81% believe that MMI has had high to very high impact on raising internal awareness of innovation focus in their company. And 40% of the MMI companies say that MMI has high to very high impact of spotting new opportunities for innovation for the companies. So these are beyond what we had anticipated and expected starting out, and it's good to see that we have had some positive impacts on innovation processes in the companies. And now Jørn will tell a bit what we see as policy implications from this.
Thank you, Hans Christian. And when we talk about policy here, it's also like what's going on, decisions basically at 3 different levels. The Nordic level and the national Nordic country level, but also inside companies. There are kind of policies taking place everywhere, even within private organizations. If we should draw 3 lessons for the Nordic level, we think that at least 3 things, and that is that a rigorous testing like we've done here, and with a comparable data set, actually creates and gives us some platform for discussing something meaningful about what is actually going on across 5 countries and inside their companies. In that sense, the MMI program is unique because first time we have such a consistent data set using the same tool, and you could say it's kind of a structured, focused comparison, and this might be something to follow up on. We also think that focus future initiatives on areas where there is low focus, because it seems that after the Nordic countries consistently have been top 10, top 5 in international rankings like the European Union's Innovation Survey, World Economic Forum's Competitiveness Survey, the Nordics always come up top 5. But that somehow doesn't translate totally into what's happening inside our companies, apparently. So maybe there's something to recalibrate some of the support programs towards customers or partnership innovation. The more softer areas. Seems like Nordic has most focused on maybe technology and science areas so far. And maybe there's more to gain from taking these dimensions that we've shown are under-prioritized. We also think that the Nordic cooperation level have maybe most to offer when the Nordic system tries to challenge existing dogma of what is feasible and what is not. And that also requires a change of mindset in circles dealing with the innovation policies, both at national and Nordic level. Simply go beyond the obvious. We also think that from a national perspective, that the Nordic, like we have done here, actually represents a unique test bed. How many areas of the world can you go in 5 countries? Do a survey and test like this? It's not so easy, and when we talk with outsiders from the EU or the OECD, you actually have very good, this cooperation, you have an experimentarium that is unique and increasingly looked at with interest. The next one, I'm not sure, I haven't coordinated with our management about this, but at least dare to say that maybe the national Nordic policies are somehow stuck in what we call a techno-scientific paradigm. I don't know, Tekes and Vinnova here and so on. It's no personal about this, but we think at least there's, without being insulting, hopefully being a little bit provocative with this sentence, that if you follow the money, it seems still that they are directed towards technology and scientific. From Denmark, we just read in the business newspaper that Danish innovation policy is at a catastrophic level in terms of generating new entrepreneurs from universities. The average cost of generating something like 7 people out of universities is $1 billion. Might be cheaper just to give them 100 million. And we think that programs should be designed with very clear intent. They should take off from the needs of business, and they should have clear success criteria. Now, the dangerous part, to be clever on behalf of the companies. The first one is actually to say that it seems that there's no way back from business model innovation. It's not an option, we think, to go back and just focus on product or process. You will lose out, and if we take the average lifetime of new companies and also existing companies, it seems that the competition is so tough. It's actually a war out there. Maybe that's why we have this military place for today's conference. In any case, it seems that this is the way forward. There will come something new, but at least the framework we introduced here seems to offer something more robust and usable than the old focus. We also think that maybe, especially partnership, because of phenomena and organizational forms like open innovation, that more experimentation with how to work with partnerships might be the future, and not so costly as to. And it's almost trivial to say, like Procter & Gamble said almost 8 years ago, not all smart people work for us. And it seems to be increasingly the case for even at country level. And finally, maybe I was at a conference in another setting where the discussion was the same. And it's interesting because there was an investor who said, we ask companies that we take over, what prevents you from growing 10-20% each year? Is it money? Is it management? What is it? You need markets. We have something to offer on all accounts. If you are ready just to tell us what is the problem, we can go in and help you achieve 10-20% growth each year. And there are experts who say that unless you grow at least 10% each year, you will be out of business in 5-10 years because you cannot attract the best people. You cannot attract, you cannot do reinvestment into innovation. So when it seems like a high number, that is the number that the winning companies globally, they go for. And they ask themselves this question: why are we not growing 10-20%? And maybe that's the last lesson at policy implication at company level, how to go at this level, and even in times of crisis. So with this, we have a short break, yes? Or should there be some questions? I don't know. We have time, perhaps. This one? Are there some... can you come up here, Christian? Yes?
I don't know if you can hear me. I try and speak out loud. So my name is Jenny Nordborg. There goes my phone. I'm from Vinnova. And from Vinnova, and I think also maybe from Techa side, we're also a bit curious about the innovation policy. Yes, I do agree with you that we're sticking this paradigm, but I also think that we are at least trying to move along side where we need to be for the future. So have you seen any changes in policy or any changes in policy discussion from the governmental agency side that can be noticeable during these past years?
Short answer is that I think Sweden put out its first official innovation white paper last year. Before that, it was called Scientific Something. They never had the official title innovation before on a white paper in Sweden. So I think that is a good beginning. I also noticed that a couple of years ago, Tech has actually discussed and used the radar framework in 2008 or end of 2000, beginning of 2009. We have people from Tech here, but they were discussing this in around 2009, 2010, that they needed to make a shift, that there were some things going on. And I think the case of Nokia has actually accelerated this entire story for Tech and Finland. Personally, I think Iceland has actually been the first to embrace from the beginning. Not so many questions, maybe because they didn't have such a grand scientific policy to begin with. And because of the financial situation, they also see that they are the first to focus on seriously on value capture. They know it's about making money.
Just one reflection. You just presented that 10 to 20% growth is necessary in order to survive on a 5 years time span, put on the edge. That's quite interesting in a time where we sort of predict zero growth or reduction of growth in the world. How can innovation be used to find paths to succeeding without growing? Just a reflection.
I think there are always companies that are successful, even in recessions. We saw some of the companies that Hans Christian showed, like Angry Birds, phenomenal growth in tough times. The Economist has an article this week about companies that we never seen grow so fast as Facebook, actually Amazon and so on. And they have been growing in a time where you say there's zero growth, but there's always somebody who finds out how to make this growth pattern. One of the things that could be argued is that most companies are, and coming back to the Hans Christian's background, is that give away when you have success. There's a curve, there's a business cycle, and when you have made your money, you need to look into something new. But the problem is to have let go of what is the success currently and enter into new areas. There's an interesting story about if you want to catch monkeys in Borneo. For last 50 years, they tried to shoot them down, not very efficient. But the old trick is to take a small plastic box where you can put in your hand, and there's a banana there. And you just put this box, and the monkey will go down from the tree. Now what happens is that it will take its hand in and take the banana and do like this. And you can just go and take it and put it. The thing is, if the monkey would just do like this, it could take its hand out. So to let go is actually maybe the most difficult thing for companies to, even in times. That's what innovation about. Let go of the current success in order to make the new tomorrow's success story. Laurila.
Yes, I'm Kristina Laurila from Tekesen. We have used almost 1 year systematically our own radar to look at the company as whole, not only the technology, but the company and its capability to grow and go international. And since 2008, we have had a broad innovation mindset. It's possible to fund technological innovations as well as business model and service innovations. Thank you.
My name is Maja Lorentzen. I'm from the Danish Business Authority. It's just an answer to Vinnova that in Denmark, we're also using a lot of money for scientific purposes. But we've been starting to make an initiative on green business models. It's only within the green area, but it's a support program for companies who would like to change their business model into being green by changing supply chains, whatever. I think one of the answers to where the money is put when it comes to governmental support is that the state aid rules. There's a limit to how much money you can give to companies, and perhaps that explains it. But we are trying to look into giving money to innovation and not so much technological development.
It's a good comment. Maybe.
Yes. Can I just comment on that also from Vinnova side? So since the last 2 years, we have completely shifted our strategy in the way that we work, and I'm more curious of, do you notice it?
Yes, we did.
Yes. So it's so that's really and the research and innovation bill. It was a research and innovation bill 4 years ago too. Now that was called a research and innovation bill. Now for this 4-year period that was just launched by the Swedish government, we actually have an increase of the innovation budget, which is really substantial, and that is also due to the strategic focus that we have taken. But I'm hoping for lots of discussions on that today with you and with the companies here on how that is actually seen from the real perspective.
There's one up back there, yeah.
Thank you. I'm from Belgium. Thank you for letting me be here. It's a bit a stupid question, but I have a hard time imagining the partnership innovation. Can you give me a real-life example, and to what extent that partnership innovation for a company? Can you give just an example on how that happens, and to what extent they can collaborate in a partnership, and how that's dealt with the issues of how you can collaborate? Is that a clear question, or do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I think I understand.
Because the offering and the process innovation is very clear, and the focus on offering. Partnership is clearly something that has to be worked on.
Right.
But can you give some low-hanging fruit on
we have
partnership innovation?
Thank you. Good question, and we will get some companies addressing this later on, also in the final debate that we have today. But and of course we have our prominent speaker Hayden Shaughnessy, who will talk about the elastic enterprise and partnership innovation. So I guess he's right to address that. But like I mentioned initially, you have companies like IBM and others putting out their challenges and inviting others in to solve it. You know, they don't really care who is out there to help them, but bid in for good solutions to bring them forward. That's a way of opening up. You also have, I think, Lamborghini and Boeing did some interesting partnerships on carbon structures together. They were totally different industries, but they would both benefit from lighter materials, going faster or going more fuel efficient. So you can find interesting partnership inside your industry or also outside.
And just one more example for you is that if you take a product like BP Castrol, oil for cars and so on, they totally dominate the Indian continent because they have more than 100 years collaboration with Unilever Hindustan. And they had more than 3 million vendors because they've been there since 1800. That's why they beat Shell and Exxon on this particular product, because they have the partnership on all these vendors with Unilever Hindustan.
I think we had one more question up here. Anne-Katrin Haveng, Deloitte.
Hello. Yeah, I was curious, nice introduction. And you also took some highlights looking back into what has been major trends within innovation. So we heard this morning that it's all about open innovation, customer-focused, customer centricity. And we know the study from IBM is to focus on business model innovation. And they also identified the innovation in products and services, but the outperformers were business model innovation. But also we see the results here from 2 years, this 2-year program, that the participants here have exceeded their focus on offerings. And that's quite an interesting reflection on that. And so we're not following the global trends. And I'm curious to hear what reflections you've made upon that finding.
Sorry, what?
Reflections
yeah.
you have made upon that finding, because it's a kind of a controversial finding if you see what the global trends are and what the recommendations of all other studies show and indicate.
Yeah, we were hoping that there would be some interesting reflections on that finding here today among more people. But indeed, it was surprising to us as well that the companies are becoming more product focused after having taken part in this program for 2 years, which is all about looking at business model innovation and expanding the horizons. So we see that, like I said, that the companies say they want to focus more towards value capture and partnership and customer-oriented activities, but they seem to be stuck somehow, or maybe not able to make that transition. Maybe the future is a bit further ahead, when they ask, where you want to focus in the future. But maybe they need to finish up something they're doing in the product development before they can turn to more customer-oriented or partnership-oriented innovation. But I would like to open up that question to.
But just a small comment there. I think absolutely true. But there's also, it's nothing wrong with having focus like offering. Might be necessary, like Apple did, to go back and recalibrate the product. The problem is if you don't consider the other 12. And that seems to be the big challenge. How to both do focus on your product can be fine, or your offering. But if you don't consider maybe do it in partnership, maybe do it more with customers, then it seems to get against the global trend, as you say. So it's a question, do you broaden or you still run around in this quadrant?
Just a second, Lars. You get the microphone here.
Thank you. Yeah, Lars Andersen, Innovation Management .se. I don't think I have the answer, but if I'm listening to our readers and the people that we are interact with, maybe one of the reasons could be that it's a big transformation, and you have to have the knowledge to do it also, because if you are used to do product innovation and things like that, and you're going to go for open innovation and business model innovation, it's new things that you need to learn, and you have to have tools, and it's a culture issue. So maybe, I mean, it's maybe there is barriers to that we had to challenge, and it looks like we here in the Nordic do not do that in the same speed or as the rest.
One more up here.
So my last comment for today. I'm not surprised at all, and it goes a little bit along with your last comment there. So we tend to focus on what we are good at. So therefore, I'm not surprised at all about the result. What an important implication for me going forward as a policy maker and implementer is that when we use this tool at the governmental agency, how do we use it so that the focus does not stay there? And that's the discussion and the comments that I want from the companies today. So if you don't remember my question, I will keep repeating. So how do we go from, what kind of support can we give along with our money in order for that to change? Because if we, for me that result is obvious, and we need the tools to shift that moving forward.
Just short reflection. Most programs we look at, both at the EU level, Nordic level, national level, very few have actually possibilities where you can have innovation support for marketing, customer experience. These are neglected in the total picture if you follow the money. If you look at the programs, they have a techno focus or scientific focus still. So maybe it is to support more like experimentation with partnership, the more softer areas of organizational changes.
Could be one more aspect of it. I don't know, maybe because of our geographies and the small markets. When we compare to the US with one big market, they are closer to the big customer groups and the partners. But again, we need customers for our products regardless of where we are situated. But I'm just thinking, perhaps customer is further away sometimes, because we develop technologies for international markets, but we are not able to interact as well with them before we go there. But that's a danger sign, I guess, because you need to be in tune with the market needs, whether the market is close or far away.
Okay.
Yes.
One more.
Yeah, Olli Laasanen, SWOT Consulting. In this program, the companies have worked as a team, and at the same time you showed an example from Apple. And I don't know how knowingly Apple has followed the innovation as a team there, or do they have had a very imaginary person, a strong, stubborn person as an individual who has been leading the innovation there? Maybe you can comment that as well, but my point here is that are the companies who have such a strong individual more successful in innovation than the companies who try to find the solutions as a team and maybe even out the peaks there in the innovation thinking?
I think it's a good question because maybe there's not so much to learn from Apple because of the character of Steve Jobs. And it was more also to show the dynamics of it. And certainly I think there's a risk that even if you have like consensus, it could also end up in groupthink. which is actually moving you nowhere. So you have an unclear profile. So it's not to say that even we argue that you should include different departments and break down the silos. There should still be choices. Business is about making choices. And if you don't have some profile, you basically haven't made any choices. So I don't think it's necessary to have just a strong leader like you mentioned. But somebody has to make a choice which direction and where to go to the edge of the business model. Otherwise, it will just be groupthink and kind of a round profile. But this is really about culture. Maybe this is one of the things in the Nordics that we favor consensus and we like to discuss, we like to have meetings, we like our coffee. That's why Starbucks never had success here, because we make better coffee. But maybe that's the downside of it, that the consensus tradition.
Lars Aspling.
Just a comment to that. Jack Welch, very famous, he implemented a management strategy called Destroy Your Own Business. That was a good start. He was not just a leader to do it by himself, but he recommended the whole organization to start to view all their business.
Okay, we have time for one more question if there are any. Otherwise, we need to keep our schedule. But that was interesting. We will have more time to discuss in the debate afterwards. So thanks for a lot of good inputs.
Thank you.